Amid dealing with a revolving carousel of injuries, the Pacers have been sucked into the gap year. Mired in a 2-15 record with the worst effective field goal percentage of any team in the last 10 seasons, while managing makeshift lineups, uncertainty at the center position, and at times slow moving growth from several still developing players on a team that has to move fast in order to outpace the lack of spacing around Andrew Nemhard, Benedict Mathurin, and Pascal Siakam. And yet, they just took the East Leaguing Pistons down to the wire. So, joining me to discuss how off center this team is after advancing to the NBA Finals last season, my longtime collaborator, my favorite basketball talker slash writer, Samson Folk. How are you doing? And do you have any injuries to report? How's the health over there?
No injuries. We are 2 years clear of the seizure, which is nice. Hell yeah.
And it is almost
Um,
exactly 2 years clear.
yeah, exactly. It seems I am destined. Last year, I was covering two teams, one of which had shot the ball terribly, one of which shot the ball fantastically, and in a way that a lot of people couldn't make sense of. This year, I am meeting the exact same terms, only the teams are the inverse. They've switched. Now, this isn't to say I don't think that the Raptors team I'm currently covering has the potential or ceiling of last year's Pacers team, but it is a bit odd the way things have switched. Incredibly so. Although that's injuries, I suppose.
Have you given any consideration to the fact that you might be the connecting point here?
Now, I
I
would
was
hate I would
I
hate to
was I
center
was
myself.
I was tracing this though. And when you were living in Mexico, the Raptors won a championship. When you were covering the Pacers from Toronto, they go to the NBA Finals. Then you came here. And since you came here,
Oh.
things have kind of gone downhill.
I was there for game
Then
3. They
you go
won.
you go back to Toronto, and it appears as though you've reversed the hex on your own team and spurred it onto this team.
I'm a powerful being. I cast hexes, etc. Yeah, wow.
I don't know how I'm going to fix this. Do I have to go up to Canada? I don't know.
Yeah, you should come cover a playoff game in Toronto. That's probably what should happen.
I'd hate to see what horrors might occur if that happened. What might befall the Toronto Raptors? Anyway, what we're here to do today is, as I said, determine exactly how off center, and that is a pun because a lot of talking points are going to be about the center position today. But all this is sourced from patron only mailbag questions. That's what I wanted to do. Samson and I have been on hiatus for roughly a month and a half or so because I kept delaying what we were doing because I kept being like, I think we're going to have more to break down once this team gets healthy. They are healthier now, but I wanted to give the control back over to the people that listen and read and subscribe, and so that we could talk about what they wanted to hear us talk about. So that's where we're going to start off, with both of us currently in good health, able to discuss this basketball team. First question, Ben Lauer. During the game against the Cavs, the announcers mentioned that Jay Huff is leading the league in blocks per minute. Why? Do you think that is because he is an elite rim protector? Perhaps because we also allow some of the most paint points and attempts, so he can have more opportunities to block shots, or is something else going on here?
Okay, so the stats are pretty easy here. He on a rate, I guess, on a rate way, in a rate statistic, I don't know how I'm supposed to say this, per the rate stats, he's contesting more shots than most people do per 100. However, he's outpacing that stat significantly with his block percentage, which I believe is the 100th percentile. And it's like between 6 and 7%. It's really high. It's partially because I think that he's able to stay grounded a lot, and he's able to keep himself in plays as a guy who's going to not only contest the shot but try and block it. And a lot of guys take themselves out of plays early. Now, Caitlin's making a face. Maybe she feels differently. He also sometimes, being a good shot blocker, is the ability to hunt and to know when a player gets stuck in their steps, when they have nowhere to go. And the best shot blockers, maybe not rim protectors, but the best shot blockers are good hunters of those situations. Now, what they leave on the backside to clean up is a completely different thing. But I, I, on some of the blocks I saw, I thought it was because Huff was able to keep his feet for longer. Now, this could be wrong. Caitlin, where are you on this?
He's had 9 blocks in the last 3 games, and he's altered countless other shots in the last 3 games. That's not to say that he didn't have a high block rate, the rate stats, however you want to refer to that, in the prior games. But the Pacers have also made some defensive adjustments with him here recently. So to take us on a journey, this is earlier in the season. The Pacers are a team that has a very low average screener depth distance, meaning it's usually like around 4.5 feet, which would be the fourth, shallowest in the NBA as far as bigs defending out further away from the basket. So they were having him defend very high. This is against the Nets. His foot is on the logo. And most of the time, if he had to get back in and recover against the screener, that was almost generally like a guaranteed foul. He and Isaiah Jackson both have very high shooting foul rates per 100 possessions. The problem is that like my solution would have been, okay, well then just quit having him try to recover, cut down on the ground coverage, let him peel off to the perimeter and have the low man switch onto the screener. Well, that's well and good, except for when the guard is, or the screener low man is Ray J. Dennis, who's a guard, and now you're having a guard on a center and he's having to defend around the basket, which he does miss it, but that can put you in some bad spots when you're trying to peel switch with the roller or tag switch on the roller. So when Jay Huff played for the Grizzlies last year, the Grizzlies were much different from the Pacers in that especially if a non-shooting big had a touch above the break, as soon as that touch happened, they would automatically have him drop back into a one-man zone, and then he was responsible for cutters, and it was maximum ball and lane pressure for the other 4 players on the floor to be applying on the perimeter, with him staying in his spot around the basket. And you could see that multiple times against the Thunder when he was guarding Isaiah Hartenstein, where he would only come up out of that drop if there was, in fact, a screen. So the Pacers, to try to replicate that, because they're not going to do that all the time because of what I just said, like that looks like a more conservative scheme, but in reality, for the other 4 players on the floor, it is actually far more grueling because how much you're having to deny top lock to prevent the offense from just being able to play in downhill over and over again. They start playing a lot of zone when Jay comes into the game now. So he's still getting to play a one-man zone, but now his teammates are doing it with him too. So 21 possessions of zone when he was on the floor against the Charlotte Hornets, blocked numerous shots within that zone while he got to stay mostly in his spot. He said after the game that he hasn't really played a lot of zone in his career, despite the fact that, they were almost doing that with the Grizzlies a lot of the time. And then the Hornets kind of made this easier on the Pacers, quite frankly, because they shot the 3 pretty poorly in this game. They tried to go zone with Jay against the Cavs and the Pistons as well, but the Cavs, it was only like 4 possessions in that game because the Cavs made 2 quick shots and then the Pistons made some shots too. So the difference that they did in Cleveland to try to remediate that against better shooting teams is they were just cross-matching Jay onto the lower usage bigs and putting Siakam onto Evan Mobley. So again, he's getting to stay closer around the basket. And that's what you would have seen late when he got that really tremendous double block in the fourth quarter, where you can literally see him pointing like Siakam, take Evan Mobley. That kind of made him have to go out of the paint because of the exit screen just for a bit here. But he gets to go back to the basket. They're really having him sag off as the low man from the corners. And then he's just getting to stay around the hoop a lot more. And I do agree with Samson about Jay's actual skills as a shot blocker. And I guess that's kind of more what the question was referring to and how he's able to get so many at once. But it's also the Pacers making a concerted effort to be like, we're going to try to find hacks and ways to get your radius closer to the hoop than what they were doing earlier on. Because when his average screener distance is more than 5 feet, they're only giving up 0.886 points per chance on those 76 picks. When it's less than 5 feet, meaning he's much further out from the hoop, it's 0.980. That's actually improved a little bit over the last few games. Before it was much higher than that. So that's kind of my answer. Is I just think he's getting and having the opportunity to more so be in that spot, because if it was simply scheme and nothing different with Jay individually or with what the Pacers are doing, then Tony Bradley and Isaiah Jackson would be having really high block rates too. If it was simply just about like how much they're giving up at the rim and how much they're funneling shots there.
I think also, I think he's jumping. He doesn't gather big into like he's not. He
doesn't have to recoil as much as what. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean by like keeping his feet, is that he stays on his toes in these situations, which would make him worse at absorbing bumps probably. But as far as like going to try and like high point the ball as a shot blocker, he's in a pretty good position. It's also why he's that predilection of his is also why he's good at catching lobs and a quick dunker as well.
The reverse lob. They worked with James Wiseman on having to not. They tried to work with James Wiseman on trying to get him not to have to recoil as much. So that's a good catch. We're going to continue on with some of the center related questions. Pinder, so how long will it take for Rick to start and play his best center more minutes? Maybe you know why coach wants to slow burn it at this point, given all the weaknesses of the center group. One that blocks shots at a Wemby rate should probably be giving him a leg up at this point. He is just under 30 minutes the last 2 games, but Tony Bradley is still getting into the game ahead of him.
So before the season, I was of the mind that I thought Jay Huff was the most talented center on the roster, and that if they found out the way to use him properly, and if he, I guess, acquitted himself to the process, that it would be a pretty easy straight line from playing the most minutes. And I think that they're starting to capture some of that value in the usage. You just obviously walked through defensively how they're been able to mine more of the advantages of his skill set and size. But I do still think there's quite a bit of soft stuff that you've highlighted that he's missing on. And there is also like an expectation of pace and decision making that sometimes he looks really sharp in, and sometimes there's a big drop off. And what coaches want more than anything is dependability. Even if it's a lesser skill set, a lot of times coaches make their decisions based on dependability because they're planning they want to plan around known things, not unknown things. And that's why some very tantalizing players can be so frustrating for coaches because they don't, I guess, they don't fit in as easily. And there's always going to be this push and pull, or maybe not always. There has been a push and pull with J Huff so far. That's my view of things.
I mean, yeah, if we're being honest here, none of these bigs have really been consistent enough to give any of them a leg up over any of the others. I wouldn't necessarily say. I agree with Samson, and that headed into the season, it made sense to me for Jay Huff to be a starter around Siakam just to try to replicate what they were already doing with Miles Turner from a spacing perspective. And then off the bench, play Isaiah with Obi Toppin, because similarly there. I wasn't sure if Jay would get as many minutes as the other big simply because I thought Obi Toppin was going to be available to play backup 5, and now Obi Toppin isn't there to play 4 or 5, and sometimes they're really having to slog through minutes with 2 bigs at once, which has been pretty rough. In the case of why I think Tony Bradley was coming off the bench before Jay Huff in the last few games, like Jay didn't really start finding his footing, so to speak, and popping off, especially as a pick and pop threat until that game against Charlotte. They altered some of what they were doing defensively, and he just, quite frankly, he made shots in that game. So there wasn't really a reason for him to be the first big off the bench in that game until he had that game. And then also the Hornets are like top 5 in offensive rebounding rate. They had over 20 offensive rebounds against the Pacers, and that was kind of the risk of playing as much zone as they did, because in zone you're naturally going to give up more offensive rebounds, and they even gave up 6, I think, while Jay was out there in that coverage. So a lot of times when Tony Bradley gets the nod, it's typically against opponents where they think there's going to be a rebounding threat. Similarly, my guess is that was the thought process against Cleveland, even though Jarrett Allen wasn't available in that game. And I did think it was a little bit odd that there was even a spurt where the Cavs played small with Dean Wade at the 5 and Tony Bradley stayed in for a little bit of a stretch there. And it might have just been like they weren't expecting that rotation to be out there while Tony was. But Jay was the first big off the bench against Detroit. And even then, like, Jalen Duren had trouble against the Pacers a year ago, like a lot of trouble defending Miles Turner. Miles hit like 7 threes in a game against them. Detroit decided to flip-flop that matchup. They put him on Siakam, and then he had just as much trouble guarding Siakam. So I kind of thought there might be a chance that they would start Jay just for that reason alone, to try to put more pressure on Duren to have to guard in space a little bit more. And especially because the Pacers have had so much trouble guarding Duren in the reverse. But they ended up going with Isaiah still, and then Jay was out there during the Isaiah Stewart minutes, which they didn't do as much switching with Stewart as I would have guessed they might have. But that was kind of one that was really the only one that I could have been like, Most typically, it's generally they're looking at matchups as to who's playing when. Like, they closed the game against the Hornets with Isaiah because Diabate was out there, and then they were switching everything, and they just wanted Isaiah for the ground coverage. So generally it's just about matchups. I don't know that I think that they're going to get to a place where they're going to be solidly like, this is our starting big this year, and we feel good about it every single game. Like, I'm I'm not convinced that that's necessarily going to happen, although I do think that Jay's been trending in a much better direction from where he was at the beginning of the year.
I think it would benefit the Pacers greatly if Jay really figures things out
Yeah.
and he's still not their starting big.
Yeah.
That would be like, let's say next year, if he's on the team and they figure out a lot of what these wrinkles they want to run with, especially for the churn of the regular season next year, I think he could help elevate a lot of stuff and just get you into winning some more minutes. But as far as this team and the aspirations into the future, even though, again, vacuumed into the gap year, sucked into it, mired in it, as it were, even though it's here now, the expectation should be that this team still has a lot of the identity and pieces that should take them back to the upper echelons of the East, and probably not Jay Huff as the future. You'd want to look elsewhere, I would think.
Yeah, because I mean, the fact of the matter is some of the stuff that's working with Jay is really stuff that's going to work in shorter bursts.
Yep.
Like, and not just because of his conditioning, but like there typically is a tipping point with zone. It's like, can we get away with 5 possessions of zone? Can we get away with 8 possessions of zone? Like sometimes it can really work in just a handful, but then the longer you try to have to do it. And I do agree with Samson too, that like in the past, having Jalen Smith off the bench, having Thomas Bryant off the bench, it provided the Pacers with some continuity and stuff that really works within Rick's playbook when they're able to do more 5 out. So I can see a place perhaps for Jay in the future if stuff really works for him, but I'm not seeing them necessarily getting to a starting big this year. But that kind of flows right into what the next center related question is from Patrick Fagan. Do you think the Pacers center for the 26-27 season is currently on this roster? Then secondly, can you give some possible trade targets that the Pacers could go after for next season?
Easy. The center is not on the roster.
Yeah.
That's my aspirational view. My even more aspirational view is that there's a fire sale in Memphis. There's a man named Jaren Jackson Jr. who, I would love to see him play next to Tyrese Halliburton. And he might not be the center, but he can shake up the front court in such a way, or I don't even know how it works out for the Pacers, but I would love to see Jaren Jackson Jr., one of the best driving bigs in the NBA, play next to Tyrese Halliburton. I just am imagining
Shall we
hit-ahead
tell the
scenario.
funny backstory of Jaren Jackson Jr. and the Pacers?
Yeah.
Samson and I were at the finals waiting during warm-ups, and we were discussing who we thought the best fit at center would be for the Pacers. Like anybody. Like just dreaming about trade machine stuff, which everybody knows I do all the time. Like I'm always pulling out the trade machine, trying to figure out which players work on teams. I kid, this isn't something that I do. But I actually brought up Jaren Jackson Jr. because I thought, defensively he gives you a lot more versatility, and offensively he's able to do more on the interior that they're missing while also still providing the passive spacing that's made a lot of what they do work. My only concerns there is obviously the Pacers don't have a lot of matching contracts for such a deal to be made, especially after he signed that extension. And secondly, is I must admit that when I watched the Grizzlies play the Thunder and they put Alex Caruso on him, and then they doubled because he is such a limited passer, I was like, I'm not sure that should have worked as well as it did. And then the rebounding, has kind of been a long-term blemish, which the Pacers have already been dealing with for a long time. But I really do love Jaren Jackson Jr. When I thought the Grizzlies might be headed in a different direction, I was like, bring him home. But this is not me suggesting a trade, people. I have not removed the trade embargo. I've merely discussed a name. But yeah, I don't think that the Pacers center for the 26-27 season is currently on the roster, unless we're just saying, are any of these centers going to be on the roster next season? And in that case, Isaiah is under contract through 26-27. So
the center next season is James Wiseman again. We're running it back to try.
Well, let's all make it known that the Pacers drive numbers when he was on versus when he was off was such a giant plummet that he started one game and then they waived him the next day. So let's just leave that one there. But as far as Isaiah goes, really quick, I will show something that is popping up lately for him that I think that they're going to have to figure out. Maybe not as much next season, but certainly this season in terms of his individual development. So when they played the Milwaukee Bucks at home, I don't have the clip, but I found it very strange that Miles Turner, of all people, was defending Isaiah with his heels outside the 3-point line, and that allowed Isaiah to have his most drives in a game, I think, of his career. He finished some shots at the rim around Miles, left him on the perimeter. Other teams are not doing this. They're doing what we just watched Jay Huff do for the Grizzlies. So pretty much when Isaiah gets it on the perimeter, like Nurkic is dropping back. And the problem that you're going to see with that is like Samson and I have talked about this in the past. I typically love this type of coverage when I see it. I liked it when teams used to do this against Scotty Barnes because Scotty Barnes is so good at setting up handoffs and as a passer that you're just giving him tons of sight lines to set up handoffs and whatever else you want to do. This is a problem when the Pacers are shooting 28% on movement threes. They don't have guys who can really rise and fire behind these actions. I mean, Ben Shepard has time to take a rhythm dribble on this one. And he's still misfiring. I really like Isaiah that he can do the late pass. He can maintain a live dribble, pivot, and throw this over the top. Like that's a skill that he has, but also he threw that over the top of Isaiah Stewart, who's like a 6'9" small ball center. It looks a little bit different when they're trying to run their 77 skip action and it's Yusuf Nurkic, who's close to 7 foot, and he's sagging off and taking away that pass. And then a lot of times teams start top locking the guy in the corner. So you're not being able to get an uphill handoff either. And then he just kind of gets stuck in the offense. There's too many possessions where he's not even looking at the rim here. He's not even considering taking a shot. I think he's taken like less than 10 shots outside of 10 feet this whole season.
This is Junior Sabonis stuff. It's just getting like, in the playoffs when Sabonis catches at the elbow and it's just like, damn, I don't know if I want to take this one. Similar.
The difference there being is like in that beam team season with the Kings were shooting incredibly well out of dribble handoffs, and then they got in that series against the Warriors and they all vastly underperformed the shooting quality. The Pacers are in a similar spot because they don't have any movement shooters right now. Ben can do some of that. Aaron can shoot above 40% on movement threes. He's not available. Tyrese Halliburton isn't available. So a lot of it looks worse. You're really dependent in order to solve this, which is what I was saying, like as the season goes on, like something that I want to watch for from Isaiah is like looking for late rolls, because the one way you can counter this, if that big's going to play clear back at the rim, and because Andrew is good with the extra dribble, if you allow him to get a head start, get out in front of the roll, and he shows a lot of patience in the high paint, can attract that guy, and then you roll behind it, that's actually a really effective way of countering it. Andrew doesn't do it here because he goes to the Pinoy step, but the more they can develop that type of chemistry, the better. Similarly, this isn't even a screen, but like Samson, if I pause this here, where would you hope that Isaiah would cut to in this action?
Okay. I want there's two options here. Who's at the top of the screen being guarded above the break?
Pascal.
Okay, then no. I was going to say maybe go set a screen on that man to have him curl around like into open three-point shooting space, but I want him cutting towards the bucket.
I want him cutting behind Andrew.
Yes.
For the drop-off.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know why you would cut to right there, because Andrew's looking for the horizontal handoff there, and there's nobody to give it to. So like just finding the right spot to cut into, and I actually clipped this from the Piston side, something that they're doing with Asar, which would have worked on some of those ones where we're showing Ben Shepard getting top blocked. Ben Shepard's top blocking Duncan Robinson here. Pascal is not guarding Asar Thompson. Sandwich him. Set an inverted pick and roll at the elbow. Like Isaiah doesn't have the same athleticism to get off his feet as Asar does, but he can put the ball on the floor for 1 or 2 dribbles and get to the rim. Like some of the short angled inverted stuff when he's being not guarded above the break and he can get down to those elbow areas, I think could be effective. Nate Bjorken actually ran some of that between Doug McDermott and Sabonis when Sabonis got guarded like that. But like that's just a really quick thing about Isaiah. I mean, coincidentally, you'd think based on the things that I just talked about, the offense has actually produced better with Isaiah and Tony out there than it has with Jay Huff to this point. But Isaiah and Tony have also played more minutes with the starters than Jay Huff has. So just from Isaiah's own individual development, I want to see how they're going to start problem solving some of that, because it's really tough when your big isn't getting guarded with the ball in his hands and those delay actions, and you also don't have a lot of moving targets to be able to take advantage of that space.
Yeah, it's a quality insight that this happens with the Raptors over the past couple of years. Is you're doing analysis of a team that isn't good, so you have to project like, okay, what might work in the future, and some of the stuff isn't even necessarily being able to do it on your own. Sometimes skill development requires a marriage with another player, and it just won't show up until that player is better. And we're seeing stuff like this with Isaiah, and there's going to be other things that crop up during the Pacers season. But this is kind of what you have to look for, and this is what teams are doing constantly.
Last question about the center spot. Pacers fan since 1969. I did not rewatch the game, but appeared to me that Mobley was absolutely destroying Isaiah Jackson. The Pacers switched Pascal onto Mobley, and the dunking at will ceased. This makes me wonder and ask you whether a small ball lineup of Pascal, Benedict Mathurin, Andrew Nembhard, Ben Sheppard, or Jarace Walker, and hopefully soon Aaron, would work, or at least work better than what they are doing now. I do like Huff in zone, as you have pointed out. He's really disruptive with his shot blocking and altering, but unfortunately, he does not rebound at all. I shouldn't be at this point surprised at anything Pascal does or can do, but his post defense on Mobley looked fantastic. What say you?
Pascal, watching him defend from when he was on the Raptors to the start of with the Pacers to where it is now and where it's been for a while. Although now isn't like exactly where it was for the playoffs, but what a turnaround. And still, providing a ton on a team that, what are they, 2-13 right now? 2-14? It's, well, regardless, not good. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to talk about it. Pascal, I think the Karl-Anthony Towns matchup in the playoffs was a really good indicator of this. Yep. You've talked about him before as like a master of angles on offense, and that applies defensively as well. There's a reason why scouts like certain offensive indicators as reasons to expect, defensive improvements, because it's an ability to read the floor and read body motion. I mean, Andrew Nembhard is the utmost savant of reading body motion. And if you asked him to describe it, he probably wouldn't even be able to do it adequately. It's just an innate thing that he clearly understands and his body responds to. But it's so important. And I don't even know if I'm answering the question really. But yeah, Pascal has an unbelievable ability to do that as well against some of these matchups.
It's funny because when people outside of this market discuss what made the Pacers better defensively or what fixed their defense, I oftentimes feel like they don't have much understanding of why the defense got better. The pressure certainly mattered, but the pressure started clear back in the 2024 playoff run, and really slightly before that. They played it pressure defense all last year, and while the pressure certainly was expressed better once Andrew and Aaron and Ben got back and were healthy, that isn't what changed it completely. They were making adjustments throughout, but also, to me, one of the biggest differences was how much Pascal improved after having a full training camp and having a much better understanding of what the Pacers wanted on that end of the floor. I've cited the stat before, but I mean, the Pacers were a top 5 pick and roll defense with Miles as the screener defender when Pascal was on the floor, and they were the equivalent of a bottom 5 pick and roll defense when Miles was the screener defender without Pascal on the floor. And some of that speaks to Obi Toppin and the giant chasm between Pascal and Obi and their quality as defenders, but it was more so like it wasn't Miles who was necessarily propping up that defense. Do they miss Miles Turner right now? Yes, certainly. Like, he's better than the options that they have at center, but Pascal was really a linchpin and a guardrail in a lot of ways, just like what he was doing last night. Like, he's guarding Asar, and by not guarding Asar, he's making the defense better. But also, as Samson pointed out, they got to a point in the playoffs where it's like, okay, but we can't just have you do that. We have to have you guard Karl-Anthony Towns now. We have to have you guard Giannis too. And his development on that end of the floor and everything they got from him, I thought was one of the biggest factors, which is why I wrote about him in the piece that I wrote about him. But
I'm going to relitigate quickly. The Miles thing, they do miss him.
Yeah.
They're in a better position without him. I really they still have to search and find the center answer.
Yeah.
This team already, Game 7 of the NBA Finals, they showed a ceiling. I think it would have been really, and it's still going to be hard, but I think it would have been really, really difficult to find their way there with Miles as their starting center. Once again, I think they would have had a lot of trouble.
Yeah, because I mean, it was those types of matchups. It was Oklahoma and Boston that he really struggled against, and that's just the reality of what the situation was. So, as I put many times, I don't want people to misinterpret what I said over the summer. I said that they need to take a step back, and they clearly have taken a step back in order to hopefully take a bigger step forward later on. And I don't know what the answer there is going to be at the 5. They are currently off center, but you're hoping that they're going to find that and that they're going to find the right person, whether that's via the trade or in the draft at the end of the season.
Nice piece of business getting that draft pick back. A very important, tidy piece of business.
The Raptors might have traded a top 3 pick for Brandon.
Listen, no. Listen, Brandon Ingram isn't part of the Pascal trade. That pick is not part of the Brandon Ingram. Just no, we don't talk about it.
I mean, it's fine in all seriousness, but in case some Raptors fans listen to this, there's no way that any team could have anticipated that this is what was going to happen with the Pacers, whether it was the Pelicans or the Raptors when they decided to move that pick. But that concludes the center-related questions. Now onward to the third-year player-related questions. KS, is the reason Ben Sheppard and Jarace Walker's shots aren't going in because their teammates are injured, or have they lost confidence? And then he adds, sorry, my English isn't very good. I am cheering on your blog from Japan. So hello to Japan. Thank you for the support from Japan. I appreciate it. And don't worry, your question makes perfect sense to me. I think what he's getting at here is Ben and Jarace. Ben and Jarace have obviously both struggled both from the three-point line and really the field as a whole for the most part. And he's asking, is that because they don't have as many good teammates to play with, or is it something more innate to both of them? So let's start with each of them as individuals. So let's talk about Jarace first.
Well, geez. Jarace has really disappointed this year relative to what I was hoping. Like, I know this podcast definitely goes deeper than all others, but 33% from the field, 32% from three. There's no getting over that hump. No player will ever be able to put up those numbers over an extended period of time and be functional or additional or anything like that. You and I have talked before about how some of his soft skills are good and can be multiplicative. They can multiply and help accentuate what other good players are doing on the floor. The hard skills, creating his own looks, using physicality with his inherent size advantage against a lot of the matchups, that kind of stuff for his own offense that isn't predicated on getting stuff from elsewhere. We've hit the wall on it, and we've hit it hard. And those warts are showing an unbelievable amount. When he is a player who is gets to just touch and go during the overall flow of what the Pacers are doing, then you get to see some stuff shine. But when he's depended on for certain linchpins of actions and stuff like that, boy, we're seeing it. That's where I'm at on Jarace. It's been tremendously disappointing. And I don't even know if it's something, I mean, you and I have talked about this before. It's tough to incorporate the changes he needs to physically.
And that's where I want to look at with Jarace. I view the two situations with these two players very differently in terms of where the struggles are coming from, because in Jarace's case, he had the ankle injury in the series against the New York Knicks. He didn't play in the NBA Finals. And then according to he and Rick, that recovery was very long, and it was already a shortened offseason. So I don't think he had a lot of time, as Samson and I talked about, in terms of the actual biomechanic balance issues, him playing on his toes, not grounding and using the soles of his feet, not absorbing contact on either end of the floor. That was stuff to me that needs to happen in the gym. That's going to have to happen with a trainer over the summer. So I don't know how much opportunity he really had to be able to correct or work on any of that. And that's unfortunate to me because I'm not trying to pile on here. And I will say much better game against the Detroit Pistons last night. Obviously 21 points, 8 of 10 from the field, 5 of 6 from 3 last night. That's great. Anytime he can start seeing the ball go through the hoop, that can only help with his overall confidence level. That being said, 82 players who have attempted at least 50 shots in the paint following 2 or more dribbles this season. And Jarace has the worst conversion rate at 32.1% and the worst shot quality, second worst shot quality, following only LaMelo at 39.3%. He has 43 shots out of drives going to his left, and he's only attempted 7 of those shots with his left hand. These are problematic things that are going to need to be corrected. So for me, when I'm watching Jarace, a lot of it boils down to, as I said, the balance issues, the shying away from physicality far too much. And then it's shot selection, and then there's motor issues. So I want to look at the shot selection really quick with Samson of things that I have noticed here. And this is the game against the Toronto Raptors that you most certainly watched, Samson. So Short roll pass, good pass from Tony Bradley to make that in stride. I must tell you, I was very surprised. Why this didn't turn into an automatic catch and shoot three instead of an uphill to his left ends up being a travel from the right corner. That's an incredibly difficult shot to be taking. And then he doesn't even get a shot. And then in this game against the Cavs, it's the exact opposite. He pumps the air against Lonzo Ball rather than taking the shot, and then he only is able to get to the elbow against Lonzo Ball. Like, he makes the shot, but it feels like every shot that Jarace takes is a tough shot. Here, driving from the right wing with his left against Emmanuel quickly, and it turns into a left-handed fadeaway.
Oh my
Again, he
days,
makes
man.
the shot, but that's against Quickly. Mike Conley, who I think is 37 years old in Minnesota, and this is a turnaround fadeaway. This is Ja Morant, and he runs out of real estate and doesn't even hit the box on the backboard. This one, Buddy Hield is the rim protector, and I don't know, Samson. There's too many times where Jarace is taking off with both feet from the dotted free throw line circle. It's making it very easy for Buddy to be able to provide verticality. You're not going to be able to get enough elevation when you do that. He's allowing Dwight Powell to have time to rotate when he does it here. This is like jumping off a trampoline without any springs.
When a guy has to jump off two, it's so easy to time him up.
Yep.
It's so easy to, like, with your own body, drive down on their 2-foot gather so that they have less pop. And he has good touch.
Yep.
But it's not, like you mentioned LaMelo. We're talking before the podcast about Brandon Ingram. Those are two guys who, they're like, I leave it up to my touch to help me navigate these situations. And theirs is way beyond Jarace's, along with many other aspects of their game. Jarace leaves so much to touch, and that it just can't go. We've been watching, like, if you watch Obi Toppin and Pascal Siakam, you know, there's a very difference, but like Obi Toppin is not nearly as physical as Pascal, but even he knows how to use physicality to get to his spots and to streamline his offense. And Pascal really knows how to grind and physical his way to spots and score. And Pascal isn't even an overwhelming physical presence for guys his size. Jarace is losing these battles to, like, point guards.
Yep.
Listen, Jarace should be lowering himself for his center of gravity, should be planting a shoulder, and should be controlling these interactions to see if he can isolate slowly to the bucket and finish over a guard, or if that size disparity can lead to doubles, defenses in motion. And he is just taking these inherent advantages, and he's just passing them off into nothingness. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this clear back during the pre-draft process that his physicality doesn't often match his physique, and a lot of it is tied, again, to the balance issues. The part of the reason why he's not using the shoulder is because, I mean, and it's another reason why he gathers high almost universally, because it's too hard for him to lunge when he's playing up on his toes so often. But, I mean, this is another one. This is Michael Porter Jr., and he's driving left, but he almost always wants to go to the inside hand finish on the left side of the basket, like it, and then he ends up getting a shot block.
He could have just he could stay square sometimes, you know.
Yeah,
he's getting skinny when he doesn't have to.
And here, like, Jokic isn't committing to Jarace. Jarace does have floater touch, and some of this has corrected because he is taking more layups in the half court than floaters, whereas in the past that's been a very close ratio. Problem is he's not making very many of these layups. But here, this is a time where it's like it needs to be the floater. But then he puts Isaiah in a really bad spot completely under the basket where that's going nowhere. In this case, like, shoot the three against the indirect closeout instead of driving into a collapse defense and taking the floater. Like, it's almost, most of this is almost all unilaterally shot selection issues and balance related issues when it comes to this. I mean, it was better though. Like I said, better game. Hopefully it's somewhat of a breakthrough against Detroit because he's not turning this into a tougher shot. He's shooting right over the top of it. He shot the ball well against the Pistons last night. And now here's actually an example of him putting the ball on the floor out of that flare and getting all the way to the rim and finishing with his left hand directly off the box. So those are the types of things that you need to see from him. But that's where I would summarize the Jarace stuff offensively. Did it help at the beginning of the season that he was having to do more point Jarace stuff because they literally had no point guards available? Absolutely not. Like, I don't want him having to do a lot of self-creation. I don't think that's what he's going to be. To reference what Samson said, he's best as connective tissue. When he can play sometimes in starting lineups and be like a fifth starter who amplifies the stuff that the other advantages that are being created, and he can continue the advantages, it looks much better. Like, that wasn't helpful, but now some of that is normalized, and it's really more so on Jarace's shoulders to start using his shoulders more, for lack of a better term. But if we flip over to Ben Sheppard, who's now he's shooting 19.7% from three. That's the third worst among 174 players with at least 50 3-point attempts. Your thoughts on Ben Sheppard and the shooting, especially from three?
I think there's a couple things. Really low gather, longer way up, more room for error, more points of failure in his jumper as far as the biomechanics go. And also, like, I don't think his feet are perfect. And it just he has been so streaky.
I submit this to you.
Oh.
This is he made this shot, but this is how he's landing. There's a lot of times where you can see almost a cross-legged landing.
He crossfires, yes. There's he has a lot of moving parts in his jumper. He has to quiet a lot of this down, especially when you consider, like, you can have moving parts if you're like a multifaceted scorer who has to contort in different ways and there's like an expectation of volume. But if you're a player who, you're expected to finish possessions behind the 3-point line, and if you are going to attack closeouts, you're mostly doing it, kind of in that Dean Wade expectation of moving the ball on and extending advantages. You have to be able to quiet your mechanics down so it's a little bit more consistent. He's just not been able to do so. And that's why, I've never, I've watched a lot of Pacers games over that past handful of years, and I've been lucky to, cover them with the best analyst in the world. And at no point have I felt like watching Ben Sheppard shoot, like, I'm expecting this to go in. Every time he makes one, I'm like, whew, that felt big. Ben made the three, which is not where you want to be. It's not where you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that he has 15 passes from the corner, Samson, to 30 corner 3-point attempts. And he shot 16% on the corner threes. It's pretty rough. And the sad thing to me is I wrote very early on in the season, his ball handling is better. Like, this is something that he worked on over the summer. They've been able to throw him into some ball handling reps, in part because they've had to. But you can see that that's improved. He's got to the rim more often. He has finishes against Rudy Gobert in rotation. He has finishes against Chet Holmgren where he's used a physical last step. That stuff isn't going to matter as much if the three ball isn't falling. Because I sent Samson some numbers, some of the advanced stats on these two, which let me pull up the chart because I had to update it. And this is what's interesting.
Are you flipping through paper right now?
Yes, I am.
That rocks. Hell yeah.
You don't like that I have my notes?
No, I said that rocks. This is not negative connotation. This is positive.
I was one of the few people at college who took a notebook with a pencil and wrote down notes. I could not type notes. I need to have handwritten notes. It helps me remember what I'm doing.
Really strong for that? Like,
you know how powerful I am after taking 300 level history courses at college as a lefty? There's one left-handed desk, Samson. I was doing this with nothing under my arm.
Wow. Man, you could, in a scrum, you would be able to hold up, because sometimes when you're in a scrum, you're holding up the mic, you're just like, damn, arm is sore. My stamina for writing, I've been able to keep my attention span as things have changed. I've not been able to keep my penmanship isn't that bad, but the stamina of it, terrible. I'm like, damn, this hurts.
I have to have handwritten notes. It helps me remember what I've written down. Like, I could remember where I had written something on a page or something when I would be studying when it was handwritten versus when it was typed. But back to the actual Ben Sheppard, Jarace Walker numbers. What's interesting between the two of these guys is that Ben Sheppard is seeing his highest rate of short closeouts, or I should say a much higher rate of short closeouts than last year. So 12% of the closeouts he's seeing are short. That was 9% last year. He's 9 of 51 on wide open threes. And his average time to release on his shot is much higher than a year ago. That was under a second a year ago, and now it's 1.041. So something to keep an eye on there. By comparison, Jarace is being run off the line far more, likely for the reasons we just talked about. Despite the fact that he's not making threes, there's an incentive to run him off the line, which is why I thought it was kind of funny at the end of the Warriors game that the Pacers actually won, because Kuminga was kind of lost in rotation and left Pascal Siakam wide open at the top of the key to go plug a gap against Jarace, potentially driving a closeout. Like, if there's anything that you want to give up among those 5 players, it's likely Jarace attacking off the dribble. So he's only seeing short closeouts on 15.7% of his threes, which is actually quite a bit lower than last year at 23%. So that's kind of the way that defenses are viewing these two guys. They're being a lot more willing to let Ben shoot, and they're being a lot more willing to be like, hey, Jarace, take 2 dribbles and let's see what happens after you get there. So those situations. But the one thing that's stemming from this, because defenses are like, go ahead and shoot Ben, is the clips that I wanted to throw up for Ben beyond like the actual mechanics that Samson was just referencing is that there's too many times when I said that Ben has 15 passes out of the corners to 30 shots out of the corners, where that's an open shot in transition that he needs to take. Like, fine shovel pass, but you don't want to leave those points on the table. Similarly here, this is one that he needs to take rather than immediately getting off the ball. And this isn't necessarily new. Ben's never been the most aggressive shooter, but I've noticed it more. And then like the fact that some of these threes, you can tell that he and his teammates aren't even expecting a make anymore, because he's chasing these down and turning them into me bounds. Like, the minute the ball goes up, it's like he's expecting like, well, let me go chase down that miss. So, I mean, I guess they're getting second chance opportunities out of it, but kind of crazy.
It's his jumper's in a tough spot. It'll take some work to get out of it.
And despite all that, the way to wrap up the conversation about these two players is Ben Sheppard is back in the starting lineup, despite how bad he's shooting the ball, in part because, you know, they play the Charlotte Hornets. You can put Ben Sheppard on LaMelo Ball. They tried to put Benedict Mathurin on Knipple. By the end of the game, they had to put Nembhard on Knipple. That was an attempt to try to shave off some of Nembhard's responsibility. Last night, they had Ben Sheppard on Duncan Robinson because they had botched coverages against Duncan Robinson in the game up against Detroit, and Andrew Nembhard's guarding Cade Cunningham for 45 half-court matchups. We'll get to more of that later, but really quick, what I wanted to show, yeah, here we go, is this was up in Detroit. The Pacers are down 20 in the third quarter at this point, and this is still the level of effort that Ben Sheppard's giving defensively despite time and score. Fighting over the top of picks and cutting off drives twice, that ends up being a turnover. Some of my frustration with Jarace ends up being that he's fouling a lot on drives, number one. That's against Jimmy Butler. The screen nav leaves quite a bit for desire, where if he gets beat from behind, he's still going to the poke steals and not getting back in front. But this is the stuff that really has to go. Like the transition, like not knowing the low motor stuff. Like, this is in the game against Cleveland. I have no idea what's going on here. You're the first player back and you're not protecting the rim, which should have been your top priority. You're also not getting back to the corner, and there's just not a lot there. And then as far as the balance stuff goes, I texted Samson about this play when it happened, but you can't be getting knocked off the spot with your back turned to Jamal Shed. Like that's something that shouldn't be happening. So in terms of Jarace going out of the starting lineup and Ben going back in it, despite how bad of a place Ben Sheppard's shot has been in, that kind of explains it. And that's, again, those are stuff more than anything defensively. You can't always control shots. And I do, like I said, I give Jarace somewhat of a pass because of what happened during the offseason and some of the stuff that he needs to correct. He probably didn't have the opportunity to. But this is stuff that he himself is in control of. Like, at a certain point in time, the motor issues need to be corrected.
Don't let, there's that Charles Barkley quote about Pascal on the run to the finals. He never let a little guy play him. Like, never, not once. Jarace needs to have that on both ends, you know? And it'll take years for him to, like, remap some of this kinetic stuff. But it's worthwhile for him to try, because he's talented enough that, listen, he's a far away from being, like, a quality rotation player here as currently constructed. But whether it's on the Pacers or elsewhere, Jarace has enough size and talent that, like, he's going to get a few cracks at this thing. Start the process now of working through, like, grounding yourself, really being able to, Anyway, we've beat the horse. He's had trouble.
And hopefully, honestly, that game against Detroit last night, because they wouldn't have been, he shot them back into the game late, will be somewhat of a turning point here. Mm-hmm. Next question, Daniel Klain. I know you do not deal in trade hypotheticals. That's correct, Daniel Klain. There is a fake trade embargo in this mailbag, but I do worry about this so-called quote-unquote gap year and how it changes the Pacers title window. Do you wonder, with Tyrese still only turning 27 next season when he returns fully healthy, if at all significant roster changes would be made this offseason or maybe the offseason after that? as a sort of refresh or restarting of the Pacers championship window. You know how the cycle usually goes. I feel like sometimes teams try to hold on to their core group longer than they should because it's hard moving on from players you love, even if they're less effective than they once were. Does any of this make sense, or am I thinking way too far ahead?
It makes sense. You need to be able to cut bait when like the best front offices cut bait exactly when they're meant to. You know, the Celtics are a team that they did it like 4 times in a 15-year span of just being like, this player probably we've seen the final, like, listen, we saw the best of it. He's still perceived to have a lot of it going forward, and we're going to leverage that in the trade market. And they did that like 3 or 4 times. The Pacers, a team that was built solely through trades. So I'm pretty confident if any team's going to be able to do it, the Pacers will be able to. They just need to supplement. Like, listen, this draft pick coming up, they need to. This one they got to hit. This one they got to hit. It's entirely possible that, and like just quickly, I'll say, although none of this has been quick, it's been wending and winding as per usual. With Tyrese Halliburton at the helm, there could be many different iterations of a successful Pacers team. And the Pacers shouldn't be scared of that. They should be able to embrace that, meaning that it's never do or die. It's simply choosing between, 4 paths, and 3 of those are successful. You want the one that's the ultimate look, but I'm not worried about the Pacers' future team building. A gap year, it's tough. This sucks, but I trust in Tyrese to come back and for things to look pretty good.
You know what? One of the good things that has come from this 2-15 start is Samson. Never again do I want to hear from the Tyrese Halliburton box score warriors. Never again. I don't ever want to be told, oh, he's only 2 of 7 from the field, and if he doesn't start doing, no, like,
he's Teflon.
I don't want to hear it again, because this is, as Rick referred to them many times, this is an ecosystem type team. And this is what I kept trying to reinforce to everybody while they've had the amount of injuries that they've had. This is a team that needs everybody, and they've barely had anybody. So no, it is not solely because Tyrese is out or because Miles went to the Milwaukee Bucks that what's befallen them has befallen them. It matters. Like when I was just showing those Isaiah Jackson clips, Aaron Nesmith is a 40% movement shooter who isn't on the court anymore. That matters. It matters that Obi Toppin isn't out there to play spread 5 at times and they're having to play double big lineups. It matters that Aaron and Jarace are having to do more self-creation. And the thing that I'm going to show is now, even when Andrew Nembhard and TJ McConnell are both back, and something I'm sure Samson can relate to now because I've seen some very good minutes with Emmanuel Quickley and Jamal Shead on the floor at the same time, is this was a team that typically wanted to play with at least 2 point guards on the floor.
Yep.
And now they can barely ever do that. And the thing that's really hard for Andrew Nembhard is, which I showed this on Twitter, I don't have the clips here, is after they played the Phoenix Suns, Dylan Brooks was face guarding Andrew Nembhard, 94 feet, preventing him from getting the ball, and the Pacers are having to throw the ball to Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. And that's not me trying to slander Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, who's given them nice minutes and has now played himself into a standard contract. He's not a secondary ball handler. The player that was doing that in the past was Andrew Nembhard, and now Andrew Nembhard, as I said many times over the summer, doesn't have an Andrew Nembhard to do that job for him last night. And this stood out heavily last night against the Detroit Pistons, because Andrew Nembhard defends Cade Cunningham for 45 half-court matchups in this game. That is the most that any player all year in any game against the Pistons has defended Cade singularly. And so this is very good. Like, he's getting over the top of multiple screens. He's making life very hard on Cade Cunningham in this game. But he's also having to do this while being a starting point guard, and also having to do this while the Pistons were like, you know what? We're going to do the same thing to you, just with Asar Thompson. And Asar guarded Nembhard for 31 half-court matchups, which is the third most that he's guarded any single player in a game. Like, some way, somehow, the Pacers need to have somebody who's going to lighten this load at one end of the floor or the other. And it's very hard for them to play very many minutes with Andrew and TJ on the floor. And of their point guard combinations, that was typically the least effective one. Like, it was better when it was Andrew and Tyrese, or Tyrese and TJ, rather than TJ and Andrew. But they don't really have that much of an option here. So Pascal was getting way overburdened, having to do all of the ball handling that he was doing at the beginning of the season. It was literally the most isolations, the most drives, one of his highest double rates, and the most minutes that he had played with the Pacers in the early going. Jarace Like, I don't really like a lot of the Jarace lead initiator stuff. Like, it was out of necessity, but that I think should be kept at like a minimum if at all possible. Although he does, like Samson said, he has soft touch to be able to throw it over the top on occasion. But like this stuff, like this was a case where they really do need Benedict Mathern to be able to take on more of these defensive reps at the very least. Like, I do not think it was great last night that he was guarding Tobias Harris for the majority of this game rather than Cade Cunningham, rather than Duncan Robinson, because of what some of the defensive snafus were up in Detroit. And then at the end of the game, on the go-ahead basket, who did Cade hunt for to get the bully ball basket? He wanted Benedict Mathern in the action, and that's who he ended up scoring against, which the Pacers probably could have doubled there. They did not. Long story short, Benedict Mathern been incredibly efficient offensively. I wrote an entire piece about how much I've liked his cutting and the fact that he's giving a lot of cut assists to his teammates with the way he's sucking in the defense. And he has done some things better, like at the end of the Charlotte game, got the chase down block. He can make some incredibly athletic plays. But for this season, in terms of winning, it can't be Andrew Nembhard 45 possessions against the other team's primary defender while getting the full brunt of the other team's best defender at the other end of the court as well. So again, that's why I don't want to hear from the Tyrese box score warriors, because this isn't stuff like, it isn't just that they're missing Tyrese's playmaking, Tyrese's hit aheads, Tyrese's pace, Tyrese's shooting. Certainly, they're missing his role normalization. Almost without Tyrese Halliburton, almost everybody on the roster is having to do something that they shouldn't normally be having to do, because in defense of Benedict Mathern, like, this isn't an argument I would be making if Tyrese was on the team right now. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh, Ben needs to be able to take on possessions against Cade. You'd be like, well, we'll just split that up between Andrew and Aaron. And like, that's fine. If Ben gives you a lot of scoring off the bench, or if Ben plays his way into the starting lineup and gives you the scoring that you're used to getting, you're happy with that. It's just that everything is so out of whack because of the people who aren't available that it causes you to be like, you need more from that person.
Yeah. If I can cite the Raptors, the reason why I like the Brandon Ingram trade isn't because I thought Brandon Ingram was, all NBA waiting to happen. It was because I knew the Raptors wanted to win and they were going to try to, with or without Brandon Ingram. And Brandon Ingram, that he sets the hierarchy correctly for the Raptors and moves guys into places where they're meant to be. They're the number 2 half court offense in the NBA. They're a top 5. And like, some of that is just Brandon Ingram making shots, but some of it is that most of the guys on the team have above average true shooting percentage. And that's not just shot making from Brandon Ingram. That's everyone being put in better roles. And Benedict Mathern, if he was giving you like
being life changing,
Mamu rocks, yeah. Benedict Mathern at 19 or 20 points per game with far more punch at the point of attack and maybe 3 assists instead of 2 would be a very positive change for these Pacers. And it may or may not get him paid more to score 24. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to shake out. But if the Pacers wanted to win more games this year, that would be more effective from Benedict, I think. But he also, as you mentioned, deserves a lot of credit for cutting and the efficient scoring. And also, as a final thing, I saw so many people doing like the the Pacers. I can't believe how bad they are compared to last year. Just in the like wider conversation, I was like, dude, the team blew up on arrival. Like, it blew
They realized
up.
that 9 players have been injured, and times Pascal's playing in lineups with 3 people who played in the G League last year. And while I like Talon Peter, who came off the bench for Liberty, like, those are real lineups that are being played. What are people expecting here?
And they a lot of people were like, well, they don't have Hallie. It's like, dude, they don't have anybody. The team blew up. It's so much more. It's so much more. It's hard to express how many like just hooks the Pacers have taken, like square on the temple this season. It's been tough.
All because I allowed you to come to Indiana.
Oh, okay, all right.
Next question, James. Since these games haven't been the best, have you noticed any new trends or anything interesting while watching other teams this season?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, there's this.
There's not going to be any Raptors references, Samson. Any other teams that you've noticed anything and thought, that's cool?
Well, I want to go to you because I know you have a closer eye on this kind of stuff. So I'm going to bounce off of you for this.
I do like a specific action the Raptors are running quite a bit that I think is very thoughtful, but I will save that to talk to Samson
Is it
about
is it the
tomorrow.
Iverson cut?
Yeah,
The wide pin?
all of the feels like you're going on an archaeological dig when you watch the Raptors. What is this? What is this Iverson cut that they're running here? No, so this one actually, this is a collaboration between me and Benji Ritholtz from Nick's Film School, who people might remember has been a guest on this channel. It was very ironic because I clipped this when the Pacers played the Nets. And then not too long after, Benji was like, "Hey, have you been noticing this thing? Because I've been seeing this and I just wondered if I was missing anything." I was like, "Whoa, we saw the same thing just from different games." So I talked to Samson over the summer. I've mentioned it before. We talked about it on the Cavs preview about the Cavs running the wheel action, which is it's a cut from the corner to the dunker with the person at the wing filling that corner spot and drifting to the wing as a means to
Believe it's
attack.
actually called a Raptor cut.
The Raptors do refer to it as a Raptor cut. It's a way to attack gap help, and so many teams are doing it now. You're probably going to see that in like every game. Something I have not seen before, though, at the NBA level, at least when I was watching the Nets, is that they actually run that same wheel action around empty side pick and rolls. So you're seeing the player from the corner cut out from under there. What you're really doing is you're creating much cleaner kickouts when you're doing that on an empty side action. And the thing that's interesting is a lot of teams would probably watch this and assume like, well, why would you want that? Because you're going to be cluttering the path for the roller with that guy cutting the baseline. And in reality, when you've watched this enough times, it's actually just creating a lot of indecision for that guy, whether they should be the tagger or not, more so than it's actually cluttering the spacing. And this is something that I've noticed around a lot of pick and roll actions, that the NBA as a whole, like most pick and rolls are definitely becoming 8 to 10 man actions rather than just a 2-person play. Like 2-man game in the past was really thought of like, we're going to put our best 2 players on one side of the floor and the other 3 players are going to stand there and be outlets in case we need them to. But when you're running 2-man pick and roll towards the middle and those other 3 players are stationary, you're facing a wall of defenders when you're turning the corner. By running the wheel when you're doing the empty action, you're attacking the gap help. But then when you watch the Nets, like that roll almost becomes a pin and screen then for that guy to curl into a 3 on the outside. And what Benji ended up showing me is the Knicks are running a lot of these 2-man actions where they're then cutting out the guy from the 45. So in a way, this is kind of like a Danny Green cut, like what Danny Green did for the Spurs. Like he would cut behind post ups when he played for Philadelphia with Joel Embiid from one corner to the other. When you're taking the guy out from the 45, that's, again, it's really distorting the help principles and who's supposed to tag and where. And then that's getting Landry Shamet a wide open shot. Like they're also doing it under zoom actions where you see the pin down into the handoff where they're cutting the guy out from the 45 there and cutting beneath it. So what you're doing when you're doing that one is you're actually removing the nail defender and then you're distorting the tag. Like I told Benji when he sent that to me, I'm like, that's a really special play. So there's a lot of different ways, which we'll get to at the Raptors tomorrow, where it looks like the NBA is creating clustered spacing or cramped spacing in places. Like, well, why would you cut that guy directly into their driving lane? Or why would you cut that guy directly into the roller's path? When in reality, it's such a unique way for players to be moving that defenses haven't quite caught up to the fact of what their responsibilities need to be against that. So that's one thing that I've seen. I have another one that I could have shown that I like from the Nuggets, but I think I might want to save that one in case more things develop with it. But if Samson has anything else, I'm sad that my zoom action clip wasn't there. I don't know what happened there, but
I'm just going to summarize based on the point you made, because this is something I talked about with Joe Wolfond on the episode we did, and I think it fits here, is that the reason why teams do this, and it seems like counterintuitive, is similar to what Caitlin and I talked about on the Loving Basketball episode we did, where we talked about how people are going back to post-ups to invert principles defensively. And the NBA goes through these trends of where defenders feel safe in certain spots that they're making the right decision. And I'm standing here, this puts me in a good spot to get out to these 2 guys, or all these kind of stuff. And it goes through trends offensively with what teams are trying to do. And then the response has to be, well, how do we take away those safe positions anymore? And while these cuts, as Caitlin said, they might seem like they're cluttering spacing, they're actually just changing the defensive principles and in creating new ones. And a lot of times in the NBA, if you want to be able to churn out points and get it from a lot of different places, it can't just be like our star is so overwhelming. It has to be that you're creating
Unless Brandon
indecision.
Ingram shoots 60%, then you can't be.
Well, he always will, and he always has. Listen, he's the greatest mid-range shooter of all time. I will not be addressing any other questions about this unless perhaps you and I talk about it Wednesday night. Anyway, removing the safe spots on the floor, the easy decisions for the defense is a really dependable way because the talent level of offensive players in the NBA, even just role players, what they're able to do in these advantage situations has gone up so high that having guys attack in motion, having guys attack defenses that aren't exactly sure, like Jarace Walker, it's not picking up in transition or not being able to take away the room and stuff like that. That's inexcusable. But what offenses are trying to do in the half court here is to put guys in the types of positions where Jarace was. It's like, yeah, you're a step too wide. And you didn't know that because these are new concepts and you thought you were in a safe position. You thought you were taking away 2, when in reality now you're taking away 0.3 or something like that. It's the motion assists that, even if it doesn't seem intuitive at first. And this is a battlefield where things are constantly changing and evolving.
Are you ready for the questions that are about you?
Sure.
Amy829. Since Samson is going to be joining again, I want to ask, which Game 7 was more devastating for him? The Pacers or the Blue Jays? Which was easier to quote-unquote move on from? I know the answer to this, but I'll allow you to say your thoughts.
The Pacers was much worse. Like
Really?
much
Okay,
worse.
I didn't think that's what you were going to say at all. I didn't think that's what you were going to say.
No. The Blue Jays have won before, and the Blue Jays, like, they were similar to the Pacers in that they weren't supposed to be there. You know, that was the predominant, that's how everyone looked at it. They were, I think, the underdogs in a lot of their playoff series. But I think that because the Blue Jays have some expectation, all the fans are really excited about like running it back next year. And the Blue Jays are a really rich team. They can spend money, and it's not a salary cap sport, so they can go nuts. They could sign like one of the best outfielders in the league, Kyle Tucker, if they really put the screws to the the financials. The Not only that, I really like Tyrese Halliburton. I really like the kindness that he shows to the world and also to my friend Caitlin. I think that's like the Tyrese and Rick have both, for somebody, Caitlin, who has like a Patreon and needs exposure, them shouting her out and saying like, hey, go here, that kind of stuff. Tyrese, I think, is a good man. Watching what happened there, it upset me. It was like actually viscerally upsetting to watch that happen. I hated it, and it's you start the watch and you say you don't get to come back to this for about a year. That's so much worse. And the Blue Jays, while it was heartbreaking the way that it ended, there's none of the other stuff. And the Pacers, they haven't won an NBA championship yet. And every time they come close, there's like just this like, are you kidding me? This is how it went? That's so the Pacers thing, because I'm not, I'm a Raptors fan growing up and now I cover them. The Pacers, I thought that was a special team with guys I know, guys I talked to for a long time, like Pascal, a guy that I really think is an exemplary person in Tyrese, and just a great collection of men. And it was extremely upsetting to see it go the way that it did. I think it's far more than the Blue Jays. That's a long-winded answer, but
I'm
yeah.
not smiling because any of this is good. I'm smiling because I'm just so shocked by this answer.
Well, yeah.
I did not think this is what you were going to say at all. Like, I will say for myself, obviously, I watched a little bit of the Blue Jays Game 7. I'm not really a baseball person. I did watch it, mainly for Blake reasons, because I was hoping good things for your mortal enemy. But
who will be on the podcast soon.
yeah, mainly for Blake reasons. But when I wrote the piece that I wrote that was from a more personal place, I cried when I wrote that article that day. Like, this was a hard thing to watch. And like, I think for Pacer fans, like, that's kind of what has made this season all the more difficult as well. Cause you're literally having to live out this grief every basketball game.
Yep.
Like, even the game that they played against the Raptors, and I clipped it, like, you're watching Tyrese from the sidelines calling out a play, which, I mean, it was the play that they run at the end of every first and third quarter, but like trying to help his team in that way. And like watching him at times feeling kind of like what he looks like is like kind of helpless from the bench. Like, I want to make this situation better. And there's not a lot he can do from it. And also from the fan perspective, like knowing, like I remember the first night my nephew was watching the Oklahoma City Thunder game with me because I needed to watch him. And he was like, we're not going to get to watch Tyrese play the whole year. Like, that was his reaction to it. And obviously there's other silver linings that can come, and I've tried to write and highlight them, whether that's what Andrew's doing against unders, whether that's Ben as a cutter, whether it's some of what Ben Sheppard was doing as a ball handler earlier. Like, that's what you're hoping to see throughout a season like this, but it is kind of hard to move on from it when what's everything else that's gone wrong for this team at the beginning of the year. No, from you personally though, I'm very surprised, because after that game happened, and maybe I'm revealing too many private interactions, but you sent it and you were just like, peace done, peace sent. That's what you said to me.
Well,
I replied back and I was like, I'm devastated by this. And you're like, yeah.
it was extremely upsetting. But I figured we would, well, of course we're going to talk about it, and I was clearly not like, yo, that's chill as hell. Like, when we talked about it, I was like, yeah, this sucked. I hated that. I talked about it at the time when we did our podcast, but like that was his response. He's just so human during it all, and it was just like there wasn't any of the like tough. It was like he knew the moment, he knew what it meant, and he knew what happened immediately. And similar to how he plays basketball, where he has an awareness of all things going on at once, that's why his reaction was the way it was to the injury, because he knew everything. Everything I just said about how it affects the team and everything like that, he knew it in the moment. And it was just like, damn. Very few times in sports do things culminate in such a way. And just for fuck, like a good guy. And I was just like, damn. Yeah, it's still, to think about it, it actually upsets me.
I guess actually some of this is pretty fitting, because a lot of times you don't say things when they're bothering you. But I also thought you're gonna pick the Blue Jays just because of the relationship with your mom and getting to go see that game. So I thought maybe that's what it was gonna be.
She called me the other day and was just like, "Thank you for taking me." I was like, "Hell yeah," you know. And but
That's
my
cool.
mom, she was like, "That's still it's still a special team, you know." And maybe she'll come next year. Maybe they'll win a World Series next year. I don't know.
Well, I
But
don't think that we will soon forget that we covered the NBA Finals, even though they didn't win it.
I will not, and I'll be going this year to cover the Raptors at least. But no, just kidding.
Thought you were gonna say you'll be coming to Indiana to cover the Raptors so that you can undo this hex.
Oh Jesus!
Remember, I do remember you saying when I come back to Indiana. That
I'll
was
be coming
very
back to
adamantly
Indiana.
said. Next question. This is kind of funny because this was meant for me, but it actually applies to you as well. Life enthusiast, you've mentioned your basketball related past often. Did you or your coach father ever face a similar drought from the win column? How was the response in the trenches similar or different from your present role as fan turned famed writer, podcaster, and fan apparel purveyor? Because your
Uh,
dad coached too.
my dad did coach. It was because our regular coach, who was a fantastic player and a really good coach, he finally got married, and he was
Finally.
starting. Well, he had wanted to get married for a long time. He finally got married, and he had wanted to start a family, so he wasn't coaching anymore. And it was my grade 12 year, and my dad was, and I was like, "Dad, I'm probably, if I play basketball this year, I'm going to get like scholarship opportunities." And my dad was like, well, somebody better coach the team then, I guess. So my dad coached the team, and but we didn't have any winning droughts. Like, we didn't win everything ultimately, but we didn't have any droughts. But I thank my dad greatly for stepping in, giving his time to being a coach for a sport that he didn't play growing up and he knew very little about.
Fortunately, I am extremely built for this question. So I only ever played on losing basketball teams. I was never on a winning team in the years that I played. And as Samson knows, what do I tell you most about my life? That I only ever have good days or really, really bad days, and that I often long for a boring day, and the boring days never come. So, me covering a basketball team that went to a magical game 7 and the best season in franchise history, only to then cover the worst season in franchise history, is
uh,
extremely my life. Like, this is what I was made to do, I think and feel. So as a player, when I was on bad teams, and just to give a quick snapshot of what this was, is we averaged, like in a 32-minute game, we averaged over 30 turnovers per game. My teams did. Like over a turnover per minute. I played every position but point guard at various points in time. So I'm not going to go into the machinations of why we were as bad as we were. There's many reasons, some of them for non-basketball reasons. But I played in many lopsided games, lots of turnovers happening, lots of losing happening. And another thing that I say often about myself, which is true, is I hate losing far more than I enjoy winning. So this was very soul sucking for me at times. So what it ended up being is I grew up with two parents who my sister and I would have never been allowed not to do anything to the best of our capabilities. That was never an option in anything that we did. So if I would have not been showing effort on a basketball court, I would have heard about it. Like let everybody know I would have heard about it. But I guess for me after every game it was always a question of what can I be doing better to limit these turnovers for my teammates? Can I be sealing harder? Can I be cutting harder? Can I be creating a better catch area? What can I do when the turnover happens? Can I be getting back more? Kind of like what you're seeing from Pascal Siakam currently. Like it's almost inspirational to watch Pascal on this basketball team. Like last night when he's getting some of those extra effort, last line of defensive plays, despite the fact that he's on a team with a 2-14 record, like that's kind of what this had to be. Is just looking at yourself and asking each and every day, like, what can I be doing better to be making this situation better? How can I be a better leader on this given day? Because like I was never playing on a team that was going to be winning games. I did call and ask my dad from his coach perspective because he wasn't coaching a bunch of losing seasons. He had one or two that were pretty rough. And I said, what did you do during those times? Do you have any inspirational tales to tell? And he said that the most important thing was that if you know that you're at a talent deficit and you know that the games are probably not going to be good, that it's imperative that the practices are. It's imperative that you emphasize what positives are actually happening on a basketball court and you reinforce those to the players in film sessions and that you show them like this is what a win is going to be for us. Like Joe Mazzulla the other day kind of took this to extreme levels when he was talking to a child in an interview when he was like, people say, well, just have fun. What does that mean? But in a way, you do really have to define it. Like, what is a win for your team in a losing season? Is it, look, we had this many less turnovers in this game, or look, we're seeing you've grown your game in this way, and we're gonna praise that and reinforce it for you. That's kind of what it was from both player and coach perspective. But like in many ways in my life, like this is not unexpected at all that I would be I'd be covering something great and then be covering something terrible. And I guess my attitude is the same way in my writing. Like it's how can I bring the most to what I'm writing about, even if it is a lot of losses? Because again, I was never taught to do anything less than what the best of my capability is going to be. And I've often thought as a writer that the writing is always better when you're writing about what you're interested in. And if the writing isn't interesting, then I've always thought that that's on me, that you should literally be able to write about anything. And if you're a talented enough writer, people will want to read it. So if I'm not doing that and people don't want to subscribe to the website, believe me, I won't be putting the blame on the Pacers. I'll be putting the blame on Caitlin. But that life enthusiast is my very long-winded answer to a question that was definitely suitable for me in my life.
This is my rock skipping metaphor. Going back to, we are what make things humans. We imbue things, and that's where all the value comes from. Things don't inherently have value. A lot of things. They have value once you imbue your life essence into them. And that's life. And I'm enthusiastic about it.
You really love that rock skipping story.
I love it. I love skipping.
I find it very touching how much it means to you to talk about it.
Somebody commented on a podcast that they thought that the running bit this season was that I had been paid to use the term cannon fodder in every single podcast episode.
I don't think you said that when we've podcasted.
Not ours, but Raptors Republic, I think I've been going to the cannon fodder well very often.
It's a lot of cannon fodder and how much you're using the word cannon fodder.
Exactly.
That is the last thing you said to me in Indy, is you said this was meaningful for me. You like talking about meaning.
Actually I better not. I could go. I love meaning. I think it's that's everything.
Ian Brown. I'm always curious what books good writers are reading. Would love some book recommendations from you and Samson. What good books are you reading, Samson?
Okay, so I have a little stack here, um, but the other one is in the bedroom. So there's this. It's 21 things you may not know about the Indian Act, and basically it's just a quick read on the awareness of Indigenous people in Canada and how they got boned, and that's putting it lightly. In the bedroom is the Minotaur at Kayelanza. It's by Zito Madhu. He's pretty prominent on Twitter. It's a good book. And also, things I have to get to reading is The Golden Generation by Oren Weisfeld, which is a book that just came out. It's how Canada became a basketball powerhouse. There's a lot of stories about where Canada basketball has been. And We the Raptors by Eric Smith and Andrew Bricker. And it's kind of just like a retelling of Raptors players over the years. So this is all this stuff. But Zito's book, I think, is the most compelling so far, and this one probably the most important. 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act. That's where I'm at.
People asked me this question last month, and I had told them at the time that I had just finished reading Chain Gang All Stars. Still highly recommend that one. Ironically, your mortal enemy Blake and I both bought that book at the same time over the summer. Very line that sticks with me in it is that we are all humans, but we view humanity so differently. And then The Candy House is another one that I think was really tremendous read. In the age of artificial intelligence, it's very much about human connection, and every chapter of it is written in a different style. So it's similar to Ulysses in that way. But I actually thought a funny one that I would bring up is like 10 years ago, I read this book because I was a history major. It's Destiny of the Republic. It's about James Garfield, called Destiny of the Republic, A Tale of Madness, Medicine, and the Murder of a President. And I had written or read books about like probably half the US presidents at that point in time. And so this was one of the ones that I read. And I told my sister and brother-in-law about it. I'm like, this was a very tremendous read. I actually forgot that I owned it and that I had read it. About a week ago, my sister tells me, "Are you watching Death by Lightning?" I said, "I have no idea what you're even talking about." And she's like, "The series on Netflix, Death by Lightning." And I said, "Still don't know what you're talking about." She's like, "Oh," she's like, "Well, it's a mini series about that book that you read a decade ago." So apparently they've turned this into a mini series on Netflix. And people won't know this, but many, many, many years ago when I was in college, I wanted to read a book about Alexander Hamilton because I was reading a lot of biographies. And I got given Ron Chernow's book for Christmas as a gift, and I read it, thought it was tremendous. And then like years later, I was talking about that book to somebody. They're like, "Oh, like the musical?" I was like, "I don't know. Could be a musical. I don't know."
Scotty has gone like 7 times to watch Hamilton. It's a through line of his lore among Raptors
So
fans.
this should be revealing as to how much my nose is in a book, because apparently these pop culture things exist of things that I like. And at the time, I don't even know that they're out there. So Destiny of the Republic. My sister says Death by Lightning was good. You can read it, then you can watch the series. That's what I
Oh
got.
yeah. I'll also say Cormac McCarthy. I've read quite a few of his novels. Give him a shot. I think he's one of the great American novelists. Give him a shot. You might really like the diction. You might really hate it, but it's unique, worthwhile.
I also learned from this that you like live in a mansion. I assumed that you were in your bedroom talking to me, and you're like, "Oh, it's over in the bedroom."
Yes, I'm wealthy now. Copious amounts of money. There's 2
And you
rooms in
did
the
have a
house now.
festive pillow.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I have a festive blanket as well.
Last question. KF, every holiday season, I am charged with helping select the menu for my family's Christmas dinner. As I look ahead to this year's slate, I am curious how you would put together your Christmas dinner dream team. Main dish, side dish, vegetable, dessert. I'm assuming some sort of popsicle and beverage. What are you eating for Christmas? Or what do
So
you eat for Christmas?
last year's Christmas, which Trey and I affectionately referred to as Black Christmas, because I went to his house for Christmas, my brother and I. The best thing was the mac and cheese, and good mac and cheese really does belong. It was unbelievable. Turkey. I like the dark meat. I love stuffing. Mashed potatoes, one of my favorite foods in the world. I like the classic Christmas food
You're
dinner.
describing an American Thanksgiving right now.
Okay, well, we don't have American Thanksgiving. We have for Christmas growing up, it was turkey. Like I don't know if it's different in America. I guess I really don't. But in Canada, Thanksgiving food and Christmas food is functionally very similar. So that's what it is for me. So mashed potatoes, gravy, which I called greasy growing up. I don't know why, but my parents always remind me of that fact. Turkey, all of that stuff is what I like. And my family always would watch, like we'd wake up at like 9 a.m. in the morning. All the kids would open presents. We'd all be sitting together. We'd watch NBA throughout the day. And then we would play like a board game or something like that together and we'd eat. Although nobody was as attached to being the victor as perhaps you or your crew.
I'm very
And
attached to winning.
well,
Actually, I'm very
more so
attached
it's
to
yes.
losing.
But yeah, that's what I like for Christmas. How about you?
The only time I've ever talked to, well, I guess we've talked to each other around Christmas a few times. I remember you telling me that you had apple cider. I feel you told me that. And that you were watching Lord of the Rings. So I thought maybe like a family tradition of yours was marathoning the Lord of the Rings.
No, but my relationship to Lord of the Rings is just that like my family loves Lord of the Rings and I love Lord of the Rings. But when I was sick, I would always watch it with my mom because my mom was a stay-at-home mom until I was like 9 or 10. And when I was sick, we would watch Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and
Do you
it
want
was
to know a
great.
funny story?
Yeah.
The one time I was sick, like before this past year, there was like a 7-year span between me being sick. And
Yes.
that time when I was sick, I couldn't do anything and I had never seen Lord of the Rings. And my brother-in-law loves the Lord of the Rings, like books, movies, all of it. My sister is fairly in favor of it as well. And I was like, they're like, watch the Lord of the Rings. You can't do anything, just lay there and watch the movies. So that's what I did over like a 2-day span is I watched all of those.
Dun,
And
dun,
and
dun,
like
dun, dun, dun.
I felt that looking at a lot of the orc massacres like was making me feel sicker at times. It's a lot
It's
of
it's
gruesome things happening.
it's violent, yes. But didn't you think it was great?
I've told you this before. My problem with it is I haven't read the books, and I feel like the movies leave out too much of the backstory. Like as a
Okay.
person who's only seen the movies, I don't feel fulfilled in the storytelling.
Also, don't you recall that there's like a Lord of the Rings lore channel that had over 1 million subscribers that commented on one of our playoff podcasts was like, "This is great," and I was like, "Oh yes, the Lord of the Rings buffs are watching
I did
Basketball
not
Hero."
know this at all. Like I wasn't paying attention to this. There
Oh,
was a Lord of the Rings account commenting.
yeah. It has over 1 million subscribers, like for certain. I looked at this. I tweeted it out. I'm pretty sure, but it was a hectic playoff run. Anyway, just just watch your step. Okay, these movies are very
I don't want to
important.
lose the support we have from the Lord of the Rings community.
Well, then, watch your mouth. Yeah.
Okay, so Christmas menu slash traditions. I do not have something that I do every single year. We change it up quite frequently. On Christmas, my preference is to do things that are easier and that you can go and graze over throughout a whole day. So, like, I oftentimes will make some version of a soup. My mom has a lot of really good soup recipes, and then that way it can just be out there and you can get it throughout the day. My sister makes really good sweet potatoes, but they're a ton of work, so I always hate asking her to do it. My brother-in-law makes really good homemade bread. I like that. As you can see, like I'm not doing a lot of things here. I would much prefer to cook over baking because I like, and the people are going to think this is funny based on my coverage, but I like not having to be as precise, and cooking doesn't require you to be as precise. Yes, there would be a popsicle, which we will be getting to in the monthly popsicle closing of this podcast. But yeah, I don't have a specific go-to. I'm apologizing, KF, for Christmas. Thanksgiving, it's similar. I guess on actual Thanksgiving Day, I usually make scallops. But the one with my family on Fridays, we change it almost every year. We don't ever
Hmm.
do like, I think we did turkey maybe once, but not usually.
I had KFC once
For Thanksgiving?
for Christmas.
Okay. I don't
It
even think
was.
KFC is the best fast food chicken place.
What's the best fast food chicken place?
Oh, Chick-fil-A. And then Raising Cane's is probably a close second.
Raising Cane's is my favorite. I remember I may have told this story on the podcast before, but when we hiked the Grand Canyon, I'd never had Raising Cane's before, but we all went out there. We hiked the Grand Canyon together at Summer League. We're doing whatever. Then we played at this desert court in the Mojave Desert. And then we got back into Vegas and we ate Raising Cane's. And we were there with like a, a pee-wee baseball team. It was just us and them cranking out as much chicken as possible, slamming it. And that chicken, oh, baby, it was something special.
I like it. I like it too because a lot of the Raising Cane's have like specific things to the cities that they're located in. Like they paint stuff about different cities on the walls. That's not something you typically see at most fast food places. But breaking popsicle news, I did not find the latest outshine, but I did have my sister make a homemade popsicle for Thanksgiving. So this is me in front of my Christmas tree this morning. This is a wassail popsicle, Samson. And this is one of my top 5 easily. It might be my favorite popsicle of all time. So
Wow.
have you had wassail the drink?
No.
You've never had wassail?
I have
Do you
no
know
idea
what
what that.
wassail is?
I have no clue. You need to explain it to me.
Okay, so this is like a combination of apple, orange, pineapple, and cinnamon and other spices all into a wonderful frozen treat. So she made these for Thanksgiving a couple years ago, and I needed a popsicle for this month. And I told her, I said, "Why don't you whip some more of those up?" And she's had a ton of stuff going on, but I heard somebody out of my kitchen. I was like, "Has a raccoon broken into my house? What is going on?" Yesterday, I walk out there and she was making these. She had come
Nice.
over to make them for me, so they were ready to go this morning. I was gonna eat it on here, but I was like, I don't know if people want to listen to that, and I didn't want to take up a bunch of time, but now people can see it in all of its wonderful popsicle glory. That is the top homemade one that we've ever done, is the wassail pop. It felt very festive, so there we go. But we have made it through the conclusion of all of the mailbag questions and the popsicle lore that I'm sure everybody really comes here for. Like I'm guessing that's why the majority of people are here. But I do want to say thank you to the people that sent in questions, and thank you to the people who continue to subscribe, because while I do think this is on me and my ability to keep things afloat during what is currently the franchise's worst season, I also know that there have been people being like, I don't know if I can keep hanging in there until more of the team is healthy again. And I understand that. You got to do you. But for those of you who have hung in, I definitely appreciate you for doing so and sticking through the tough times, and hopefully anticipation of what will be another similar run to the ones that Samson and I have gotten to cover during the playoffs.
Fingers are crossed. And I would say there's definitely potential for it.
Do you have anything else that you want to wrap up or let anybody know here?
Come watch mine and Caitlin's Raptors podcast we do in a couple days and see if you enjoy that, I guess.
I mean, Samson has really, the Raptors Republic channel, I don't know that they need me anymore. I feel like it's so mainstream and has so much traffic that, they never really needed me, but I really don't think they do now.
No one needs anything, but we want.
Okay.
Do you know, there's like that Seinfeld where it's George and Kramer. He's like, do you ever yearn, George? He says, yearn? No, crave. Always crave. Constant cravings, but never yearn. And I thought that was so poignant. I was like, wow, the difference.
Yearn is much deeper than crave.
Yes, certainly. Crave is very on the surface, very shallow. Yearn is something greater.
Do you think anybody's yearning for our Raptors Republic collaboration?
Yeah. Yes. People are yearning for it. They haven't used that.
What time do you think we'll be recording this? At like 1 or 2 in the morning?
It'll be pretty late because I gotta go to the arena to do all that stuff. Gotta go say hi to Rick and Jenny, shake some hands, and catch up. That whole 9 yards thing, and then I gotta come back here and talk to you about it.
What a bummer when you're gonna have to go from talking to them to talking to me. That's gonna be a pretty big letdown for you.
I actually, at risk of them watching this and being upset with me when I say hi to them, I actually enjoy talking to you more than talking to them. Sorry, Rick and Jenny.
Okay, well, I will let you. You're better at closing these out than I am with my long rambling, so feel free. And thanks to everybody that hung in for an hour and 40 minutes.
You think you are more rambling than I?
It feels like it at times, like when I was struggling through the clips that weren't there, when I was thinking I had something that really was.
You have more talent for brevity than I do. I think I am just more practiced at closing out
I think we're the
podcasts.
opposite as writers. That's interesting because you have more talent in writing with like saying a lot with very few words than I do.
You think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably. It's because of what the types of writing that's been asked of me more lately.
I mean
I'm
this as a
not.
compliment too. Hopefully you didn't take that the wrong way.
I
I
don't
did not
know.
mean it. I did not mean it as a slight. That's a skill.
I can't be slighted. Do you know how? I don't know. Have you ever seen me feel as though I've been slighted?
Yes.
Really? Wait,
Yes.
is it like when was it? Is it something that should be
The
shared?
day that we were angry with each other, you
Oh.
were
No, that wasn't slighted. That wasn't slighted.
I
Um,
think you felt slighted.
no, I didn't feel slighted. No, slighted is not the word. Regardless. Even this has gone on a long time. But if you for me to close it out. Um, thank you to everybody for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe over at the Basketball She Wrote Patreon. That's what keeps the lights on. That's what keeps everything going here. And it's, of course, not just Pacer stuff, but you can learn about basketball at large in a way that you literally will not get anywhere else. Pretty good to me. The best writer in the world. Caitlin Cooper, the best analyst. Thank you to everybody for tuning in, whether you got into this in the morning or at night. From myself and Caitlin, have a blessed day and goodbye.